Joining us now, entertainment attorney Tre Lovell, to talk more about the case. So you've got Rashard's testimony corroborating what Cassie said on the stand as the defense looks to poke holes that she was a willing participant in all of this. What stands out to you about what has been shared so far on the stand?
Well, with respect to Dawn Richard, I mean, she was an eyewitness to some of the violence. She's testifying that she herself was threatened by Diddy. You know, these are going towards the elements of racketeering, threats, coercion, violence, things like that. So she's kind of supplementing what Cass has been saying. She may or may not testify in terms of her own, criminal violence in terms of assault or something like that. But the prosecution is putting spokes in the wheel. And she's another spoke in the wheel, and their case is going to be the aggregate, the accumulation of witness testimony. It's not going to set on just one or two witnesses.
How do you expect the defense to handle her, and also Cassie's mom, who will take the stand this week?
So the defense is going to poke holes, first of all, in the memory and the recollection. What day, what time, what did you see? Are there any variances, any other inconsistencies? Then they're going to go to motive. What's your motive here? Were you actually scared? Were you benefiting from Diddy? You were there. He was setting you up as a musical act. So they're going to cut down some motivations and biases to undercut the testimony, to go along with their theme, which is, listen, everybody that was in Diddy's life did so by consent. They wanted to be there. Nobody was forced to be there. Everybody benefited. Everybody got something out of it. Careers were being furthered. Money was being given. And that's a consistent theme with the defense.
There has been some attention paid to Diddy's appearance in court. He's graying. At one point, he was reading the Bible. What will the jury's instructions be, and how closely, in your experience, do jurors watch the defendant throughout this process and some difficult testimony and how they react to it?
Perceptions are extremely important. The jury is hearing horrific testimony about a monster, a sexual monster, a violent monster. But they're looking at a guy that's graying, that has bifocals, somewhat scholarly, somewhat religious with the Bible, a completely different perception. And that goes a long way. And his team is telling Diddy, listen, remember, everything you do, the jury's watching. So don't do anything erratic. Don't do anything that's not part of this picture that we have of you. And so, I don't know if there'll be any instructions to the jury, but the jury is taking it in. They're hearing testimony, but they're also seeing this guy, and that does go a long way.
Is it a tough line to draw, though, between his character, which has clearly come into question, and was this a criminal act? How soon before you think the defense will make those connections, will connect those dots?
Well, that's really the issue here, because a lot of the facts are not in dispute. He was violent with Cassie. He had beat up Cassie. They had these freak-offs. She didn't like it at times, etc. But the question is this just a personal relationship gone bad, gone awry between two people, or is there an actual criminal enterprise, behind it? And so the government's going to need, much more testimony. They're going to need additional victims. They're going to need people from the inside to testify in terms of the criminal motivations. They're going to need psychologists to explain, that by staying so long, it didn't mean consent. So there's going to be a lot more testimony that's going to be needed. But we're only within, we got 1 week down, starting the second week. So there's a lot of more spokes in that wheel to be created.
And will they need receipts? Is it more than just power? Would they need, how did people benefit, for instance, financially? Will that come into play?
Yeah. So the key is, let's just take racketeering. It's really, two or more people forming a criminal enterprise, by performing two or more predicate criminal acts. So they have to show that this is just not domestic abuse. This is just not violence, but it's actually, an enterprise to have, to force women, through fraud, force, or coercion, to participate in these sex acts against their will, with more people than just Diddy. They have to prove that he was doing it along with other people. So, it's a little bit of a climb, to make. But I think that as we go further along, we're going to start seeing different pinpoints, and then at the end, the government's going to try to put it together.
Yeah, another important day in court. We'll be following it closely. Tre, thanks as always. Good to see you.
Great to see you too.